Hello, everybody else. Hi, Bruce and Christine Slade. I'm waving at you. I'm sitting here at Charles Sturt in Albury. Apparently it's 30 degrees outside, but it's about -2 in this room, which is lovely. And I've got Rachel, Lisa, Miriam, Paul, Betsy, and of course Jenny Monday here with me. So welcome to everybody here in person and welcome to the people on the webinar. As you can see from today, if you read through the blurb, and I'm just filling in time because Jenny's still trying to get the video conference to work for everybody else. This is the final in our webinar series, which is funded by the Office of Learning and Teaching, and it's been specifically set up to provide professional learning for staff. So I know you're probably all sitting here going, I hope this is a PebblePad webinar. But sadly, it's not going to be actually a PebblePad specific webinar, but the beauty of having you guys here in person, but also with the videos conference people when they join, will be that we can answer really specific webinar questions because at Sydney Uni we're PebblePad as well. Although I believe we're quite fortunate because we moved off Classic quite some time ago and have been on version 3 and version 5's coming in. I think that's part of what's going to happen with your world. But I can tell you that there is a person on one of our webinar participants who is actually Christine Slade up at University of the Sunshine Coast. And Christine, I'm just going to put you in this, who has actually really done a fantastic job with PebblePad, and I'm sure that if you haven't met her at a conference already, her and her team, Kylie Reedman leads the team up at Sea Salt, which has a name, an acronym, which just sounds like we're sitting on the beach eating lobsters, but I'm sure that's not what it is. But yeah, her and Priscilla Trahir and Keith Mervyn have really done an amazing job with Pebble up there. And of course, you know, Alison Poot is a tremendous resource, and her the other consultant that works for Pebble, which is Jodie Young. Yeah, so there's some pretty good Pebble contacts for you. I'd also encourage you strongly to think about coming to the ePortfolio forum next year. If you haven't been to it already, it might be because it was in Perth or somewhere that you couldn't get to. But it's in Sydney next year. We're going to host it at the Conservatoire of Music right in the city centre. So come to Sydney. It's in hopefully the semester break for everybody. It's in the AVCC week, the Australian Vice Chancellor's Common Week, September 28 and 29, just before the long weekend. So it's a Wednesday, Thursday. There is a charge for that. I'm not sure how your university funds travel or conferences. So you're all going to ride your bike there. The rail trail's only down the road. Get on that. You'll be fine. Yeah. But yes, I think I'm wondering why is that PowerPoint just not working for some reason, or I've got no charge and I'd hate to actually run out. I am plugged in. But is it just the PowerPoint's not working? All right, and we'll see if it's there. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Just wherever you want to put it. Yeah, I think the charge last year might have been around about $120 or $150. I'm not saying that. Thank you. It's charging now. Yeah, I don't know whether that's going to be the charge, but certainly that's a really good way for you to, you know, fit into the not just the PebblePad users, but the portfolio users around higher education. Well, it sounds like everyone's staying at Betsy's sister's house. There we go. She got room. I'd offer to stay at my house, but my 3 children occupy, you know, 3 of the bedrooms there, and I occupy the other one. So. Well, yeah, it's interesting. As soon as you go away, they find other things to do.
While the cat's away.
And look, you know, it's not his job to look after his 12-year-old brother. I have to say that. It's my job to do that. But you know, a couple of weeks ago when I did say, Mummy's going to Aubrey on this day, is it possible that you could be at home? Oh, yes, no problem at all. And even this morning it was yes, yes, yes. You know,
Then I was within a mind block.
yeah, anyway.
They need to learn it's family life. My 16-year-old was very irresponsible, but it's an ongoing lesson.
I think so, yeah. And look, you know, he does have grandparents he can drop his brother at. So I'm here. Christine Slater said agreed. Okay, so go to meeting. I think we've got what's happening here. I'm just reading the chat. Hi there, everyone. That's from Christine Slade. Don't forget Priscilla. Yes, I did. We find the Australian ePortfolio Forum extremely helpful and quite inexpensive. It's cheaper than most conferences. There you go. Agreed. And it isn't designed for profit, but to get people to come. No, it's true. And you'll be at the con. I'll get some musicians to play something beautiful for you. Be beautiful. All right, Jenny, are we getting very close to having a video conference?
Yes, we are. Our video conference is now open. But here you are.
Okay.
You're up on the webinar here.
Yep.
And video conference has joined in before that, and at 3:30, Dubbo will also join.
Okay.
But Sandra is on the list, from Dubbo, sorry.
Yeah. Sandra Stewart's just asked, as you can see on the side there, Jenny, is the next hour going to be on Adobe Connect only or only VC?
We'll have both open.
Both open. There we go. So, there we go. Look, today is really trying to wrap up the series that we've had of professional learning, and I'll just give an ad there for our project website, which is ePortfolioassist.com.au, all one word, where you'll find the recordings of 4 of them. And I'm pretty sure that you guys had, Jenny, did you record your session you did in July? Yes, so the 5th one's there as well. So there's a nice suite of webinar recordings which have gone through a range of different topics. And today we're finishing off probably with one of the areas that I find quite close to my heart, which is really about teaching reflective practice and using the portfolio as a reflective practice tool. And lots has been written about this, and I think probably within reason, you don't hear too many people disagreeing with the benefit of reflective practice. So today I thought I'd introduce one of my areas that I work with in my students because I teach musicians to be music teachers, and my as a teacher educator, my area is in cognitive and developmental psychology. So I use the Johari Window, which has been around for quite some time, and I adapt that to sort of help students navigate that reflective practice concept. All right, so effective skills in teaching reflective practice for ePortfolio through the Johari Window, and obviously this is not the only way you can teach reflective practice. So hopefully today we'll have a little bit of discussion going on, but not to put too much pressure on the people either typing or in the room. But Jenny Monday, as part of the project team, will certainly be helping us explore some examples of reflective practice. So I see portfolios as really being evidence for narrating your learning story. And when I say your, I'm including staff in there as well, because I cannot understand why anybody would ask students to engage in a practice of creating and building and engaging in portfolio processes and products without actually engaging in that themselves. So don't make me come around to your office and check that your portfolio is full, but that's really what I believe in. I think philosophically and educationally, it really is a necessity that you practice ePortfolio or portfolio practice. It doesn't mean that you're on there every day, but it means that you're actually engaging in how a portfolio is part of that narration of your learning. And as teachers or as educational designers or as administrators, I think it's really important for us to have a commitment to the tool in that way. So I don't think it matters what your role is. I think it's just really important for you to do that. So thinking about your own learning story, you know, how do you narrate that? The best, you know, practice for you is probably to think about, you know, considering what you know, what you don't know, how you learnt that, and what you've learnt from it. And this is where the Johari window really comes in. So I've used it as a model for really being a reflective tool. Students don't need to know too much about the theory of it, but because it's an actual window pane and it has 4 little spaces in it, they quite like the idea of categorising, you know, their learning into those 4 window panes, if you want to think about it that way. And look, maybe not many windows have 4 window panes anyway these days, but let's go back to play school when they did. Because I'm showing my age there, but everyone's smiling, so that's good. And they were different shaped, that's right. So we'll call these different shaped, but in fact they're just different definitions of the window panes. I've got a little, you know, spelling error there, which is good. How do students actually benefit from considering the Johari window for building capacity as a reflective practitioner? As we look at the window and we think about the classification or dividing of your learning into those 4 spaces, then we probably can consider how students engage in the reflective process. Because it's not just, okay, you will reflect and now you will write me an experience. You know, it's not that easy. They actually have to be guided and scaffolded quite considerably through the reflective process and reflective understanding. What I always say to people at this stage is as you scaffold them through it and as you actually think about reflection, particularly for practitioners, it's a really nice skill to develop. And I'm thinking, you know, within the health sciences, within management and business and law, certainly within teacher education, you know, there really is lots of ways of applying reflection and reflective practice in your professional role when you finish your studies and you're out there being a practitioner. So, and I'm sorry if I left anybody's discipline out there, that was not intentional. But I'm just sort of thinking within my world. So, you know, we might also see an example, have a bit of discussion about the role that portfolio plays in supporting improvements in teaching and learning. So from a pedagogic point of view, we're all engaged, well, we're all employed by the university and its, you know, mission should be to practice good, you know, teaching and learning. That's why we're all here. And so, you know, we have meetings, we have discussions, we have performance reviews, we have discussions about those things. Now, at every time when you're involved in that discourse, it's really about reflecting. It's asking you to look forward, look back, look sideways, look to the person within your team. So it's, you know, it's not, it shouldn't be something that we go, well, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to teach it. So think really specifically about how you engage in your reflection on a daily basis with your colleagues, working in teams, particularly at a multi-campus university like yourselves. You're constantly engaging in that collaborative process to, you know, just process information sometimes. So I always go back to my amazing, wonderful David Bowd, who I had the pleasure to be taught by in the mid-90s at Uni of New South when I undertook a graduate diploma in adult education, higher education, sorry, it was called. And, you know, David at the time was saying, let's get rid of, you know, textbooks and, you know, formal assessment, and let's just think about how we learn and what we learn. And so this idea of actually reflecting for different purposes is one that we need, I think, really consider how that applies to our own situation. Because if we want to just, you know, cookie cutter reflection, I don't think we've really got what reflection's about. Because it is about the variety of experiences. It's very much about, you know, what are the different things that we are learning at the different times we're learning them, and how do they impact on our learning. We'd like to all say that every time a student engages in a learning experience, it's of value. Let's say that, because that's what we should say. But it's about how we validate that. How do we consider to them and sell it to them? How do we say this is impact on who you are and where you're going and what you're going to become? And I think that's how reflection really works well for that. And I'm not going to ever diss the younger generation, but you know, it is what's in it for me. It's the WIFM. You know, they want to know that there is something in there for them. And so I think reflection or journaling, you know, has to be actually defined by the different purposes of what you're doing. So Bowd says that it really is about capturing, recording, exploring, but making sense of what we know. They can write notes, they can write an assessment task, but unless they actually explain it to someone and own it, then I think we'd have to say that learning hasn't really occurred in a deep way. And we don't want to put our students through opportunities day after day of surface learning. That's not benefiting us as an, you know, a collaboration of higher education educators, but it's also not benefiting the next generation of learners and practitioners. So they need to be able to explain that. They need to be able to make sense of it. And one of the really key and well-researched ways of doing that is about exploring it, unpacking it, repackaging it, thinking about it. And that's why, you know, Bloom had a taxonomy of higher level thinking. You know, it has to go into analysis. We have to compare and contrast. We have to synthesize. We have to actually, you know, explain and evaluate it and predict and think about it. You know, that's all part of that higher level of thought. So reflection and reflective practice actually, you know, ticks all of those boxes. So in creating a portfolio, we're asking the students to actually use reflection as a device, for them to work with their evidence, for them to work with experiences, and to extract that meaning about it and put it in their own words. You know, reflection isn't chunks of text, you know. It's meant to be personal reflections, opinions, your own words. And so it doesn't have to have all the right academic language in there. And we've got to relax a little bit about that. So as we scaffold this, and it's really nice to see that Milena has really emphasised that, you know. We can't just go reflect, and it's not a magic wand. You know, we actually have to scaffold that. And we have to give them examples, and we have to talk about it often. Which brings me to the Johari window. So what is it? Well, I think it might have been the late 60s when two American psychologists, Joseph Luft was one of them, sort of explored this idea of what do we know? How do we explain it to somebody? What don't we know? And how do we explain that to other people? So in a sense, looking through the window as open, blind, hidden and unknown is probably one of the nicest pictorial representations of the Johari window. And I can assure you, if you Google it, you'll probably find about 400 images of it. But I like this one because the green and the red are really symbolic for me, because, you know, it's a go and a stop, if we want to think about it that way. The hidden's gentle. It's like the ocean and the blue sky. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's not there. It's just how we unpack it and how we reveal it and how we explore it. And the blind is really, well, why are we here learning? You know, we're not trying to really tell everybody that we know everything, but we do have experiences, and those experiences can be built upon. And that's why we have things like recognised prior learning, because there are experiences that happen in a completely different context that have value in what it is that you're doing at the time. So I think that, you know, as I explained to the students through this model, that they really are learners on a journey. They're learners in a group, and they're working collaboratively and utilising those around them that might have a whole range of different experiences, ages, cultures, backgrounds. You know, it's really all about them trying to unpack these different window panes so they can self-learn, they can self-navigate, that they become actually part of that learning process, like the behaviourists will say, that it's a permanent change in behaviour. Their learning is not just something that's surface, it's actually about being deep learning. So as my students all nod like you have when they see the colours, they go, yeah, I know exactly what to do with that Johari window. I break it down just a little further for them and say, okay, let's think about your understanding. And I actually put these into each of the windows. What do I know? What do I know? What do I really feel confident with? Now, for musicians, they'll go, I'm an amazing cellist. You know, I can get my AMUS and I can perform and I can get paid to it. So, you know, what I know is how to play my instrument. And I'll say, great. Could you do that same Rachmaninoff piece on the piano? Oh, no, I couldn't do that. Right. So what don't you know? Well, I don't know how to play the piano. I know how to play this piece and I know this repertoire really well, and I know everything about its duration and its pitch and all the elements that fit in there and how to interpret the score, and I can read music, and, you know, the symbols don't, you know, but I can't actually apply that to another instrument. So then I say to them, so you know what you don't know? Oh yeah, I know what I don't know. I don't know how to operate that thing with the ivories. Right? I can do a little bit because, you know, I compose my own work, you know, and do that, but I can't actually operate it at the same level. And then I'll say to them, okay, would you be able to transpose this score for French horn? Oh, I don't know. But I don't know that I don't know that. I think I could do that. I really do. I know enough. I've got such good musicology skills, you know, I know all about harmonising, and I think I could do that. So I sort of try and put it into an example where they feel really comfortable. So in the green box, what I know, I'm confident of this, you know. Yes, in the yellow box, which doesn't look too scary, it's what I don't know. Down in the blue box, yep, I know what I don't know, very much so. I know that I don't know how to do that. So they're exploring through these 4 panes, which are all different shapes of windows, if we go back to our play school analogy, what it is that they have to consider during their learning journey. So as a reflective practice tool, it's kind of like a scaffold. And quite often I can start with these 4 questions when I'm working with first years. So in first year, in week 6, I asked them to actually reflect on the first 6 weeks of their course, which we aptly name Key Issues in Music Education. And they've read 6 articles, or they might have read a chapter of, you know, their text, and they may have read another 2 articles, they might have seen a YouTube clip or a TED talk or something like that. What's the most difficult thing these students find? Which of the 3 will they pick out of the 6? Do they hold greater value? If I choose the academic text, will I get a higher mark? Now, many of them have come straight from school. So that's their agenda. You know, I better go for the fancy schmancy high-end one, because if I just use the TED Talk, then, you know, I won't get as high a mark. But it's how they try to unpack that to be able to write a reflection. Second thing I asked them to do is not to go more than 200 words on each one of them. So I said, I really, you know, once you get to 500 or 600 words, I'm done. I don't want to read any more than that. You know, a reflection is not an arduous task. It's meant to be a summary, as we looked at through Bowd's idea. Your words, your opinion. How do you actually approach it? How does it impact on who you are and what you're doing at this time? So by giving them these lead questions, you know, I've read this article and I know this, yes, okay, I'm feeling comfortable about this being an issue in music education and what I need to do that. I didn't know something specific about what I found in that article. I know I didn't know this. I didn't realise that, you know, in this article or in this TED Talk, they're talking specifically about, you know, the way synapses change during a musical experience. And then they might talk a little bit about what they want to find out through this course, because we're only at week 6. So really, most of them are starting doing this assignment at about week 3, because, you know, they're fresh at uni in first year, and why not start your assessment task in week 3? So we do get a lot of reflections on the first 3 pieces of reading that they do, because they've read them and they know them really well. But the nice thing about this with the students is that I get asked lots and lots of questions as they go through this. You know, how much do you want me to write about what I think? How many quotes do you want in there? Do you want a reference list? Should I look at another source that also talks about this particular issue? Right? So they're, in a sense, they're reflecting on the process of the assessment task as well. They're developing skills about being reflective, and they're asking each other. Now, we're not supposed to know that they all set up their Facebook pages per cohort, and, you know, they all chat to each other about, you know, what did you write, how did you write it, and all that. But I think that's amazing that that community of practice opens up for them in their world without me being a voyeur. You know, as long as they're not saying anything terrible, you know, I could always find out if I wanted to. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that they start asking each other. So in fact, by me, first of all, giving them a fairly solid reflective tool through the Johari window, by giving them specific scaffold, and then not interrupting their natural flow of reflecting on the actual task with each other through a whole different medium that's not university monitored and not part of, you know, a mandatory component of what they're doing, then I really think that they're getting a nice solid introduction to reflection very early on. Does it change their learning? Does it actually become a permanent habit for them? Well, you know, we lose a few along the way. And I think that that's probably just part of the natural attrition. But I do know that by planning and designing reflective ePortfolio tasks, I am giving my students the opportunity to engage in a really robust, reflective exercise. Now, I don't stop there and, you know, kind of cut the candy off for them. You know, we continue to put reflective style tasks through their portfolio assessment tasks all the way to the end of 4th year. And in 4th year, where they're going, oh, I'm so pleased you made me do these portfolio. I've now got a job and I've got all these things just sitting there waiting to, you know, copy and paste or cut or adapt or modify into my applications for jobs. And they also feel really empowered as teachers going into the profession where they have to, you know, get accreditation. So they feel like they've actually, you know, done something useful. They've reflected on their own learning and practice, and I think they've actually considered all the connections between the experiences and the skills learned. So as I go along through the degree program, the activities that are in place really do have a concrete foundation of reflection and reflective practice. I tell them that if they cannot find a bridge or a pathway or a stepping stone from the theory to the practice, then they're not going to be great musicians or great educators. And it still frightens me the more and more schools that I enter where they go, oh yes, Thursday's theory day and Wednesday's practice day. I go, oh dear, is it really? No, please don't say those words. But I feel like they actually do engage in what is evidence in building their own learning. My fourth years now, I've pinched it from Deakin. Anyone there from Deakin, thank you very much. They do make a 1 minute me. They actually script and record very much based on that Harvard elevator pitch. Do you know that one? Yeah, who they are and what they've learnt. And they find that a really difficult 60 seconds in their life. How can you condense the 4 years of what I've done, all that portfolio, because by the end of 4 years they've got a very, beefy portfolio. How do I condense that down into 60 seconds? But, that really asks them quite seriously to reflect on who they are and what they've done. Now, this was the first year that I used it with the students, and 4 of them have written to me and said they've got jobs already, and they reckon it's because they had to find the confidence and the power to actually talk about themselves in that first 60 seconds in an interview. Google it, me in a minute, the 1 minute me, can't remember what it's called, at Deakin University, but there's some really nice examples on there, which is good. So let's have Jenny talk a little bit about this lovely approach to encourage good reflective practice in students.
And Rachel might actually recognise. I'll just come up here.
Yeah, I'm just going to.
No, don't add me in. Just
Oh, you don't want to add
as long
me.
as you can, I can be heard.
All right.
But me in a minute, just I suppose not quite as a selling point, but one of the ways in which we've had our students explain about themselves is by using metaphors of themselves as teachers. So in our Master of Education program, when they start the ePortfolio, they have to, well, they do a number of things in the ePortfolio, but one of the main things we ask them to do is to find or make an image of themselves as a teacher, something that says something about themselves as a teacher. And they go off and do the rest of their degree, and then they come back at the end. We ask them to do a whole lot of other things in the ePortfolio, but one of them is, okay, is the metaphor the same, or do you need to find another image? And it invariably is different. And so we also do that in the undergraduate program. Now, in the undergraduate degree, we haven't actually we're just at the point of putting the ePortfolio in the 4th year. But when they come in first year, one of the things is to find it or make an image of themselves as a teacher. So we have a subject called Teacher as Learner. They start their ePortfolio. The ePortfolio has different purposes in 2nd and 3rd year. And in 4th year, we will once again ask them. So we had an opportunity to trial that little idea with some students who are applying for a scholarship this year. This year, Paul? Yeah. Yes, this year. And this is actually the student who won the scholarship. She had a very clear idea of herself and this image she made herself. So either she took it with a time lapse, or she got someone to take it of her. But it is her, and I should acknowledge her. Thank you, Stephanie. Where she explained that here she is, a 4th year student, The road ahead is her uncertain future. It's a straight line, it goes around a corner. Wonderful, exciting things are ahead, and what is behind her on the road is her 4 years of education studies. And so she had thought clearly about how she wanted to explain where she found herself at the threshold of being a teacher. So that sense of being able to use an image, you know, when Jennifer says, you know, me in a minute, and I'm going to be on a video screen, and I think that that process of thinking through, can I make or find an image that says something about me as my current professional self or my future professional self, and then explaining it at the front of your ePortfolio, an image and, you know, a dynamic explanation of you as whatever you are in your profession is a really good front page, I think, to an ePortfolio.
And I think this probably, thanks Jenny, I think this probably is a really nice way to looking at the Johari window. She certainly knows what she doesn't know because she's chosen a really wooded forest as the road in front.
She did explain all the colours in it as well. She had everything was quite symbolic.
Yeah, and I can see that she knows what she knows because it's behind, you know that's really quite clear to her. And she probably knows what she doesn't know, which is, you know, it's up there and it's got a road through it, but I'm not quite sure that I know what's going to be there when I get there. So it's a lovely image, and I'm really pleased to hear that Stephanie did win the scholarship because that just seems to be perfect. So it's now. Oh, Jackie Tinkler missed that part. I'm sorry. Okay. Jenny said she'll, you know, have a chat to you later about that. So now I suppose it's probably a good idea to think about some examples. You know, what do you really think about describing, you know, how do you think reflective practice really impacts on your student or on your teaching, or how will it work with, you know, colleagues becoming part of this you know, process? Do you use reflective practice already? And those people that are on the webinar, please type away and we can answer. That's no problem at all. Yeah, of course.
I'm interested in this idea of mind.
Yes.
Could you repeat that again? Can you repeat
Oh,
the
okay.
question again?
I'll just repeat the question, and if I actually say it in the incorrect way, correct me. But it was really, did I have trouble getting buy-in from colleagues in reflective practice or in portfolio work?
Well, I guess ideally the end product would be the portfolio. So that whole process.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, and I still have trouble. And in fact, when colleagues say to me, I heard someone else speaking about portfolios the other day and I kind of got it a bit. I'm thinking, oh, right, so you couldn't hear it from me, that I've been banging on about it since 2009, but because someone else said it, it had, you know, some kind of impact on them. So smile and wave is what I say. You just keep going about your business because the pedagogy has a lot of research behind it, and I think trying to surround yourself always with like-minded people gives you a strength of conviction as well.
There's another question, but just before we go to Christine's question, and I'll try and get a bit closer so that I might be heard. Miriam, it's actually why we haven't yet embedded the ePortfolio in 4th year of the, I mean, how long since you were in our building over here? That's right, but so things change. The things that are obstacles are often staff, you know, because we don't maintain the same staff who have the same commitment in the beginning. So, you know, as Jennifer's saying, you do just keep banging on until, you know, and you can have the agreement of course directors, but unless you actually have the ability to write it in and have it taught properly, you know, I mean, there are the obstacles by the changing staff are often about technical stuff. Oh, I can't use Pebble Pad, you know, that sort of stuff. Rachel can nod her head in that case because, you know, we do have to keep teaching people how to use the software programs, and if they're not there, using them and then using them the next year and the next year and the next year, then we have to kind of keep doing it. So it is about keeping on and, you know, hoping we're still here by the time it gets embedded in the 4th year. You know, I'm expecting it to be in there next year, so let's hope. Well, if I have to.
I was going to say a little rule of thumb that I have is always make sure you teach on every year level. So I teach only 2 weeks in a first year course, but in those 2 weeks they have reflective practice scaffolded, have a portfolio task. I mark it, so I don't make anybody else adopt my practices and my principles. I do that, and then in 2nd year I have them as well, and I only teach 3 weeks in that program. And then by 3rd year I'm teaching a whole unit, and in 4th year I'm teaching a whole unit. So I've embedded it, but I'm in it. You know, when people say, oh, why do you only do 2 weeks in that course? Oh, why do you only do 3 weeks in that course? And that's the reason I do it. I practice what I preach. So I'm, not that I don't trust my colleagues at all, because I do, but, you know, I don't want to have to engage in a conversation where they go, I don't understand it, how do you do it? Because that's just wasting my time. You know, it's not hard to understand and it's not hard to do, but that's their roadblock. So I take away the roadblock.
I think also for us at CSU, the GLOWs, the graduate learning outcomes, become more important. And so portfolios will be a very good way for us to get students to gather evidence and provide it that they've achieved the GLOWs by the end of their degree program.
I'm not sure how many students CSU has as a campus, but I know Sydney Uni has about 50,000. And at the moment, there's me and another academic heavily engaged in portfolios, and that's it. She's in nutrition. And part of this project for staff development with portfolios that we've been engaged in, we actually have 4 little case studies. And Wendy Stewart-Smith is her name, and she actually has talked, and the video will be on our project website, explicitly about staff buy-in across the nutrition and dietetics degree program. Yeah. So that might just give you a few ideas. It might not. But yeah, I still find that almost sad that in our institution there are 2 champions. That are, you know, when I'm talking about 2 champions, people that have really, you know, taken on board and embedded it, and it's there. It's not going anywhere. It's part of the degree program, and it's a hallmark of the degree program. You know, it really is part of that.
They're using medicine and documenting their practice like that in portfolios.
Medicine do have, as a graduate program at our university, an emphasis on teamwork and collaboration, and so I haven't seen specifically that there's portfolios working. Certainly in nursing, because of their accreditation requirements, they are, yes, using something.
So Christine Slade has a question for you, Jennifer.
Yeah, sorry Christine, it's not that I was ignoring you, I was just moving on to that one. A little bit more about the scaffold of what I don't know with students. I say to the students that there is a lot of things that we don't know, and even at my great age and 28 years of teaching, there's a lot of things that I don't know. So I set them a little bit of a goal about writing what they would like to know. So as a beginning musician or a beginning teacher, what is a kind of burning question? And some of them will say, oh, I really would like to have perfect pitch. How do I get that? I'm thinking, well, okay, you probably can't just go out and learn that or buy that. That's sort of...
There's probably good research, though.
But there's probably some nice research. It's good honours paper. But yeah, so I say to them, what is it sort of there that you would really like to know? Quite a lot of them will say, my teacher did, or my mentor has. So they're sort of looking towards something that they feel is unattainable. And so quite often I work around that sort of concept. Could you pick something out that you really admire in a person that's close to you, a mentor or a teacher or performer or something like that, that really is something that you would like to have. And so when they start talking about that, I'll say, okay, how do you think you might get to it? Well, I don't know. Okay, so what don't you know about this if you don't even know how to attain it? Okay, what do you need to do? How do you start working backwards? So in a sense, I'm almost taking them through a mini reflection and a reflective practice style scaffold by them starting to think about it. I've got to say that when I started teaching reflective practice and scaffolding it into it, I had to really hone in my questioning techniques. I had to go right back to that dip ed I did, in the 80s about, remember I don't know if anyone was in that generation, but we did micro skills. I actually did that fake simulated teaching, and you had to be really specific about your various different open and closed questions and how you use demonstration and explanation. I don't think we're allowed to label that way anymore when we're training teachers, but I really did think a little bit about that. So my suggestion for that one, Christine, is certainly to script yourself a few questions. I think as you think more about the questions, you'll be better at eliciting from the students some responses about that one.
Which university is Christine from?
Christine is at the University of Sunshine Coast.
So they don't use PebblePad?
They do, yes.
So there are some great questions in PebblePad. I mean, one of the good things about PebblePad is the scaffolded questions in some of the thought tools. And when Jennifer's talking about, what do I not know or need to know, then the action plan, that sense of stepping through students through stages of how to get from one thing to another. So, I mean, in a way, I think it was one of the driving forces behind our university choosing PebblePad, because those thinking skills were, if we can hook students into using it, there's the if, then, they are helped through that. And I did make a note of that it really is important to scaffold reflection. Make them not just use the little thought tool that's just describe what happens, because if we don't scaffold them through a good reflection, then all we ever get is description. But, there's, I think, 4 types of thought tools in PebblePad. So there's the one that is just the description. Then there's the one that is the description and the reflection. Well, what did that mean after I described it all? And then there's 2 others that have got a cycle of, all...
Now what, so what?
Yes, and that really is helpful for them, I think.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, well, I've described it, and what did I see in there that was important, but what am I going to do about it now? So that's... And I think that's one of the things I struggle with our students, is to get them to that point of saying, well, what does this actually mean for my practice now that I've recognised something in what I've seen or understood?
And that's a really good point, Jenny. I mean, I always, at any opportunity when I'm working with the students, I'll just go, apply it for me. How could this work? Where would it work? What would you do with it? And they go, oh, okay. And I go, it's a hard question. Don't sit there and think the answer's going to come out really quickly. But, you know, I'm always saying to them, give me an example. Where would your evidence be? How might you see this in action? Because whilst we talk the talk about the nexus of theory and practice, we very rarely explicitly ask them to explore it. And I think you have to really train them into thinking about the application of the theory into practice. Because otherwise, they're not practicing it enough to actually understand it themselves. And as they say to me, you know, you're just one of the 8 courses I do in a year. And I go, oh, thank you for reducing me down to that metric, you know, that's just lovely. But I have to say to them, why can't you take what we do in this course and apply it to your other 7 courses? Oh, well, they don't do it, the other people don't do it in their courses. I go, yes, but we're not doing something to you. You know, we're actually exploring learning and learning tools together. You know, it's about them trying to understand that. And that's a hard thing. I know you're going, you know. Yeah, assessments. And look, you know, I wrote papers about this early on going, why won't my students engage in this fabulous opportunity? And then I finally worked out, oh, okay, they're not tech savvy. They're not doing anything that isn't got a mark awarded to it, and they're not going to do it for 5%. So as I came out of my, you know, fairyland and put my feet on the ground, they're not 5% assessment tasks. And they're not just choosing anything you feel like to stick in your portfolio. They're really specific scaffolded tasks that are asking them to really think. And they're hard.
Yeah.
Because if they're hard, they'll value them. If it's easy, they won't do it. So when I was talking to my 4th years about doing this me in a minute or the 1 minute me, they went, 60 seconds video, yes. They all got out their phones and went, right, let's talk. They thought they were just going to do it in the break. And by the end of, you know, the hour break, they're going, that's really hard. You know, they thought it was just, oh yeah, I'll be all right. They didn't realise that 60 seconds is a really short time. And they all start with, hi, my name is, I've got a bachelor of, and they start talking all about their achievements. 60 seconds is gone. And they go, oh, and they're like, okay, I need to think more about that. So then you know, I'll sort of say to them, I'll scaffold, you know, they'll start doing little bits of it and they'll say things like, should I talk about being at the con? I go, no, that's your academic transcript. They already know that. Oh, should I talk about, you know, playing as a principal in the London Symphony when they came out? Yep, that's probably pretty important. That's not a bad thing. What a great experience. But what did you play? How did you play it? What did you learn from that? Who did you work with? Oh, gosh. You know, and then you can see their brains ticking over. I worked with that person, I did this, and then I had that. Okay, yeah. So pick one of those aspects out of that. What was really key? What is different about working with the LSO, during that time? What was really, you know, your changing learning moment? And I go, okay. Oh, but then I've got to tell them about this, and then I've got to tell them about that and all that. So it is a really cognitively challenging task for them to sift through 4 years at 21 or 22 and put that into 60 seconds. So I think, importantly, it's about ensuring that the scaffold is clear in your head. If you don't have the task clearly articulated for yourself, it's going to be almost impossible to encourage the students through that.
Could I just add something to that, Jennifer? That, you know, you mentioned earlier about the tension between the time spent. You don't have to let them look at me. I'm sure they can hear me. Yeah, it's back here somewhere. We're in the undergraduates. I think that what you're saying here is really important, that you know, when they come in, they don't want to spend time on anything that doesn't accrue them any marks in their assignments. And so you're quite right, we do have to articulate clearly what we want from them, encourage them to gather evidence and show them how to do it. I mean, it really does have to be a planned attack to get them to do that. I found with the master's students, that was certainly the way in the beginning. The ePortfolio was just also a means to an end. But when you get to the final one and asking them to reflect on their degree program, so I think that's 8 subjects or maybe 10 subjects, and we do ask them specific questions and then ask them about the metaphor, but it's that kind of realization that this is really valuable time that they're spending reflecting, and that they, I mean, most of those master students are already teachers, and they put way more time into that ePortfolio. And I imagine by the time the students get to 4th year, don't have it embedded yet, but I'm sure when they get to 4th year and they see the value, they will spend more time than we ask them to, because they'll see that it really actually has a concrete value for them in their profession.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, is to keep connecting it back to what's next. It's lovely, we'd love you to all stay here, but you can't all do a master's and a PhD. You are going to go off and do something else out in the larger space of the world. So tying it back. I'm conscious of the time for those that have joined us. Thank you very much. How do we lead and how they learn is, I think, a question for you to ask yourself. Are there personal targets? Are there skills through reflection about, you know, your goals, your
Yes.
graduate learning outcomes, or is there standards in accreditation that they're doing? How much do you understand their students, and why can't you plan and reflect on those rich learning experiences that, you know, really is part of your individualised academic advice? And, you know, you might say, oh, academic advice is about whether or not, you know, they hand their essay in late and use the 2-week, you know, late penalty as an extension. That's not academic advice. Academic advice is about, you know, their learning goals and where they want to be and how they best get there. So, as always, I say thank you to the lovely Dr. John Taylor at Sydney Uni, who, even though he's not here, establishes all of these wonderful
And
webinars
Patsy's
for me.
online too.
And of course, to Patsy, who is Jenny and my partner in this project in medical sciences over at Uni of New South. As I told you, that this is part of an extension grant, and there's our project website where there are many, many, many wonderful resources, and we're continuing to add to those as we go. And if you'd like a link to the recording, please email me. And to those that were participating, thank you very much, and goodbye, thank you, and have a lovely, safe, festive time with your friends, family, and animals.
Don't do that.